and that's why we're here. We're kind of to talk about navigating this new world order, I like to call it, due to
Mm.
COVID.
The
And
old way of how we do things, that is disrupted. It has been shown to be severely weak. But there's going to be a transition period where people will reject the new reality that has been forced upon us. A lot of people, unfortunately, because we're still a heavily driven service economy, will not be able, when we come out of this, to pay their bills.
how do we bounce back? All right, Jeremy Stevens, what's up?
Hey, I'm good. How about yourself?
I'm not too bad among all the chaos and stuff like that that's happening in the world. Um, and that's why we're here. We're kind of to talk about navigating this new world order, I like to call it, due to
Mm,
COVID. And I wanted to talk to you because I wanted to learn more about how you feel uh, about the way the world is going, and even specifically Barbados with
okay.
the economy, and also not just the economy, but as a just as a human being. A lot of the things when you look at what's happening, I know for you, you will analyze it in a particular way, because of your background. So I want to get parts of your background, but also kind of bring it down to that human element. Find out what's going through Jeremy's head right now. How is it affecting you? So,
Well, I normally tell people that the human element is just a sum of different expressions, meaning even if I express myself a particular way, it doesn't mean that it doesn't affect me emotionally, or it doesn't come from an emotional place, or a rational place. So, what's going on economically? I mean, I saw it coming quite a long time, a long way away, given how rapidly it was spreading, given how the Chinese government wasn't able to contain it, like how SARS was contained in Asia, given the different levels of approaches across the Eastern world and Western world. I figured it was going to spread. What I never anticipated was that governments would be so slow in certain parts of the world to just do what needs to be done. China and Singapore were best practices, and different countries have different levels of resources. So China definitely could commit a lot of government resources towards containment in Wuhan and different places in China. Singapore, on the other hand, is a small nation like ours, but definitely has 5 million people and a lot more money. And they were able to do what we haven't done as Barbados, but we continue to say we wanted to be as close as possible to them. And the main thing they did that was different, because they didn't shut down schools, and that was part of the argument the government was trying to make. It's not necessary to disrupt so many things. And but Singapore was able very early on, from learning from the bird flu breakouts and SARS and whatnot, because every year something seemingly happens in Asia. They were able to then, I guess, give tests or test almost every citizen, number one. And their contact tracing was helped primarily by the fact that they have a lot of security cameras all over the place in Singapore. I've been there twice, I've seen it for myself. It's scary. And they were able to follow people and contact relevant people without having to guess or provide too much guesswork. So, then you have Italy as a bad case, initial case, definitely in terms of their level of response. And it is a story that most economies that have really treaded lately in terms of dealing with this issue must use as a case to avoid. And pretty much it's too late in the Western world for those countries that decided to move with kid gloves. The disease does have a very high infection rate. Luckily or unluckily, it only has a 3% mortality rate, but that is pretty high. Not as high as the flu, but nonetheless pretty high. And it's the people that it's targeting that's worrisome because of the non-communicable high precedence of non-communicable diseases in the Western Hemisphere. That even if we decided to infect everybody, a large population, a large part of our population to be sick, and our economy still would have been negatively affected. And it's probably better to shut down in the short run. And if you don't have the resources to test everyone, because if you're able to test everyone, you're better able to contain the persons who are infectious.
Right.
And luckily, as small open economies, as small nations, we don't have this. Now, from the human side, if I can answer it differently, I I am in full support of a shutdown, considering we don't have the resources to test all 300,000 of us on island.
Yeah.
I was one of the persons who said that closing the ports entirely, I wanted it closed to traffic, yes. Human traffic, people coming in, passing through, whatever the case may be. But there's the cry in Barbados to shut down the port entirely, just given how long the virus lives on surfaces. You're hearing different stories about it living from a few days to a few hours, whatever the case may be.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
But I don't see the benefit of shutting down all ports, given that we are highly dependent on imports in this country just to survive it on a basic level.
You wonder therefore, is there an end in sight? That's the scary part. Is there an end in sight? And so my question is, if there is an end, let's give say by May 30th,
Mm-hmm.
we found a vaccine, it's shipped all over the world, we can go back outside, all that kind of stuff. How do we bounce back?
Well, it's not going to be a seamless transition. And a lot of it comes down from what you do during the crisis, outside of just developing a vaccine. So, for instance, you could take the approach of the United States and what we're taking here, which is we'll wait and see, and then, if anything, we'll get the government to provide some bit of subsistence. You basically give money, and most of that money would have been targeted towards the vulnerable and targeted towards businesses, keeping businesses afloat in some way. There's some grant, I don't remember the exact amount. Contrary to popular belief, I don't keep numbers in my head. I really don't. It blurs the substance. As far as I'm concerned, the substance is in the movement of the numbers. But anyways, my point is that our strategies aren't meant to protect the middle class and the middle class who work seasonally. The United States of America has taken a similar approach where, however, they aren't using universal basic income. In other words, everybody is not going to be able to get that $2 trillion or to feel that $2 trillion in their pockets, given the method that the states just agreed to disperse that money by. It's going to mostly go into the pockets of the wealthy, unfortunately, and business owners, especially large business owners. You have the other approach, which would be that of Denmark and the Nordic states. And yes, I am known for talking about them a lot, but I like some of what they do. And they're using universal basic income. The logic being, you can't just give money, that $2 trillion in the States or the tens of millions here that we're giving. I heard something between 40 to 80. I don't know the exact number offhand. But you can't give all that money to business owners in hope that they will employ people when their business models in general have not adapted to having people working remotely. You can't run a hotel remotely given the business models that we have here. Although in China, there are cases where they have remotely managed hotels. That hasn't come here yet. So the logic that's coming out of Denmark and those places, as we see it, is that, and albeit, yes, those places tax you to the hilt, so they could afford it to a sense, but they're providing universal basic income for 2 months. So they're basically paying up to 90% of everybody's salaries in Denmark for just 2 months or so. If you're going to send home people, which is the case, you see here what's happening with hotels. It's going to take a while to rehire people, retrain people, and all that. If it is that the private sector is being told by, say, the Danish government, we can replace 90%, 80 to 90% of salaries, keep the people employed. It means then you can continue training, even if it's remotely. It means then that people can continue to provide for themselves for the most basic of needs. It means then that you wouldn't have a disruption in the job market because people may move to new jobs and not trust the old employer who just let them go in their time of need. And these are the major disruptions people need to be very mindful of. So, to answer your question, those who got that context, May 30th, if you pursue the American/Barbadian path, it's going to take some time before you see things going back to normal. I expect 6 months. If we have May 30th as a point zero or ground zero, point zero, we're starting fresh from today. We've got the vaccines. It's about 6 months of transitions. It's going to take a while. I am one, and this may be the first negative thing that I will say here, who doesn't believe that the fiscal stimulus package, the government stimulus package, will work in the way they intended. Simply due to, I don't think government would be able to adjust the wheels of government to dispersing this money when people need this money, or to deal with the frustrations that people will have in terms of the slow disbursement of this money. I really don't believe it's possible. I believe the money will be dispersed. It's just a question of when, and will it satisfy persons as needed? Because, for instance, there may be a circumstance here or there where there are employers who will find ways and means not to pay anybody. And it's happening already. I'm not going to say whom. This is not the forum for it. But there are employers out there that are finding ways and means not to pay people during this time. And it's unfortunate. And our government doesn't have the means to replace wages lost, just like Denmark. So coming out of this, you've cut people off of contract, which has been done in the tourism sector. So nobody's being, for large hotels, some large hotels in this country, not being employed. What happens with them, or the barber, for instance, who might not see everybody rush back in to get their haircut because people may not believe that all the COVID cases are gone. What happens when they can't pay their bills once we come out of this grace period? What's going to happen with them? Are you willing to extend that? Do you have as a bank the capacity to extend it, given the big hit that the banks are about to take right now because they're doing a lot of debt forgiveness in a sense? Right. So it's going to be a really crazy transition period. I'm not worried too much from the economics point of view of what happens now. I honestly believe this is a nice time to reset. But there's going to be this 6 month period, I believe, where there's going to be a lot of these stops and starts, jitters and whatnot. And a lot of it will come from the fact that, during this time, people either weren't being paid, or the financiers, the larger banks amongst us, would have given up a lot. In the OECS, for instance, the Eastern Caribbean, the Bankers Association there agreed that they will let government extend loans. In other words, the government doesn't have to pay back. They can roll over loans and also issue new debt. That comes at a cost. A fiscal stimulus, where government gives money to people, comes at a cost to people long term in the form of taxes.
Yeah.
All right. And that's something as well that we have to understand as part of this adjustment going forward, which could stem the ability of the economy to grow going forward.
Well, it's been said, I think this is BBC, that when you look at the numbers, the GDP will drop for 2020 by 1% or more for a lot of regions in the world. So it's looking like that 2020 bus luck. Let's look forward to 2021.
Correct. Not to say that this is a period to throw away things, because look at what we are doing here. You're a woman that has been involved, and I know this very intimately, in production for a very long time. And, the quality of video you get with Zoom that's definitely the best and most pleasing. But you're seeing people innovate. You're seeing people say, well, this is the best that we can have. And maybe this allows us to touch audiences in a new and different way going forward, right? You just have to deal with what you have. In different industries, I've been asking people to consider, now that you have a new way of working and that it may be able to work for your business. And maybe you need to redivert training and funds and whatnot towards having staff work remotely. Maybe then you can offer staff more, you would call it flexible time options, where they don't have to come in. You can lessen rental costs, and this would hit, of course, property owners, commercial property owners, or commercial property owners could start actually asking for different types of things to be stored in their offices. So, for example, I know a few companies here who just bought properties or built properties to store computer servers. Things as simple as that very much might be propelling most of us into this future we've been dreaming about. So I see it as a poison chalice in a sense where the old way of how we do things, that is disrupted and has been shown to be severely weak. There may be cause now during that 6-month transition to say that we could embrace a new way of doing things that may be more environmentally sensitive and friendly, may be more sensitive and enabling of basic human development. People could get to spend more time with their loved ones. I'm hearing a lot of New Yorkers talking about that now, that it's forced them to adopt a way of life that's making them a little more rounded. They never really got to fully appreciate family, know that they've been shut down or locked down. They can appreciate that. So like, I don't see it as a bust luck 2020. I see it as transition 2020. And I don't want to sound insensitive because a lot of people will pass away for this future to happen, you know?
Yeah, I think that is the more than unfortunate thing. This is very real. I mean, if we look at the I forgot to write it down, but the World Health Organization, they posted stats recently, and we're over the 500,000 mark in cases, and over 20, I think it's over 25,000 deaths worldwide,
yeah, thereabouts.
They're about 26,000 or so, and so this is no joke. The reality is no joke, especially because of how contagious it is. But you've made some very interesting points, and I was talking to somebody today, and I said, you know, and I'm a religious person. I have no apologies for it. Very religious, and I said, you know, sometimes God slows things down or pauses things for us to catch up to ourselves. And all the time, you know, people would say, today went so fast, the month going so fast, the year going so fast, and you're trying to catch up with the times. And so people have been forced to halt.
And for me, this is a 50-50, and I'm just throwing that number there, a 50-50 thing. It could mean that, especially here in Barbados, where we've had a lot of economic issues, social issues as well, as we know going into this year, with crime and whatnot, that it becomes worse, or it could become ultimately better. But there's going to be a transition period where people will reject the new reality that has been forced upon us.
But suppose we go back to normal, what would be the unfortunate lessons that we missed if we went back to how we were before?
Well, basically a reduction in the cost of doing business in a very expensive jurisdiction like Barbados. But then it would be shifting one hand to the other. There are lots of people that make a significant part of their living and wealth off of owning property and rentals and whatnot. And I always tell people, as I told a guy, and I had no idea he actually used the idea or had planned on using the idea. I don't want to say who it is. But I told a guy around 10 years ago, a property owner here, that it would make sense for people to start selling space for servers as opposed to human beings, because business is going to move in the cloud anyhow. I was seeing that as far as 10 years back. And it's interesting to see now that, you know, places like the BT building, which is partially being used, of course, or significantly being used as a school, but also a place to store data in a sense. And you're seeing more and more of that. So I think it's always the job of an entrepreneur, and you're an entrepreneur, you understand this, to repurpose your business. You can't give up. Business is tough. You need to repurpose and stay relevant, as the case may be, in the marketplace. But how you ask you or what you expect of your employees should not be the same thing. The employees are not the persons taking the risk. You're the one that has to make sure the employees are prepared to do this. So if the environment changes, most business owners, I'm not going to feel sympathy for. Your role is to go out there and create. And it might sound bad, but this is the reality of hard and fast business. Else, Barbados will be left behind. You're going to find more American companies embracing, for instance, remote working. You're going to find probably more companies thinking of a global presence, having, shifting their call centers away from some office to separate places. I could do my manufacturing there. I'm a small t-shirt factory or a small t-shirt brand in Barbados, and I can do my logistics here, but I can do my manufacturing over there, and I can do my accounting in the Philippines. You're going to see more of that. And you have to compete against these people. So you have to adapt. If not, you'll be left in the dust and you will close accordingly. So I do believe that anyone that fights against that future is not prepared for what's about to come or what was inevitably coming as well.
Businesses that will thrive, businesses that will hurt.
I worry for incessantly are my 260-plus-year-old parents. But yet their jobs are essential, so they have to brave it out.
We live in a digital era, but this is like digital 2.0 now.
Agreed.
Yeah.